All right, we're live here on the Penn State Blitz here on PennLive. Greg Pickle.
Good to see you again, Bob.
I know, it's been a while. Happy 4th of July.
Yep.
I don't want to know how many hot dogs you're going to eat on Wednesday, but
could set a record.
Under or over 10?
I would say quite under.
Okay. Lot to get to. You had a busy weekend while I was away. Live for Life.
Mm-hmm.
Going to get to that in the 4 downs, and we're going to talk about some recruiting.
Yes.
Also, Dwight Galt, Penn State strength coach, gave some updates on some players and kind of where they're at as the team gets ready for August practice.
Yep.
Some news on some young guys, maybe some guys that he really thinks can really help the team that aren't really known guys.
Mm-hmm.
First, in the first down, we're going to start with a couple of things that happened. Live for Life, another successful event where they raised a lot of money, and also there's some recruiting news. They got another 4-star linebacker, Lance Dixon.
Right.
Let's start with Lance Dixon, 4-star. What are they getting in him?
Yeah, an incredibly talented player, Bob, that could play linebacker and could play safety. Now, you think back to Koa Farmer's recruitment. He was a running back, a wide receiver, a linebacker, a safety. And it was more, yeah. I don't think Penn State knew what to do with him. They knew that they could get him eventually into a position where he could thrive, but I don't think they knew what to do at first. I think with Dixon, it's different. They know he can play linebacker, and they'll use, between him, Micah Parsons, and Brandon Smith, I'm not sure how many other linebackers Penn State's going to need. I mean, quite honestly, you'll get Jesse Lucado on the field. You'll get a lot of other guys on the field in 2019 and beyond. But, Bob, they're pretty much set, especially assuming Brent Price stays, which he obviously has had options to go elsewhere after every offseason since he got to Penn State. But he likes to play the 4-2-5, and you don't need a whole lot of linebackers on the field in that situation. Penn State gets a guy in Lance Dixon that could legitimately play 3 downs in coverage and against the run. Supremely talented player and a guy that, you know, they land over Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State.
And just a note on Live for Life, I believe it was the 16th year of Live for Life.
Correct.
Raised $100,000, always a great cause, and it the way the team kind of rallies around to kind of support that, and they have some officers that kind of make sure things go smoothly, but
yep.
It just seems like each year it gets a little bit better.
It does, no question. I mean, it was indoors this year, and it was hot. I mean, there's no way around that. It continues to be hot in central Pennsylvania. So, no, it was a great day. There's a lot of people there despite the date changing from Arts Fest Saturday, typically in July, to the end of June. But they raised a lot of money. They hit their goal of $100,000, as I understand it. And I mean, it was a good day. Micah Parsons was front and center at the kids' clinic. All the true freshmen are now on campus, except for Nana Aceto, of course, who is on campus but won't be able to play due to a heart condition that came out after last week's blitz. But it's a shame. It's a good thing they caught it early, though, Bob. It's something that a lot of people don't find out that they have until it's too late.
Yeah, and just you know, I know that you really liked his game.
Yes.
He was a 4-star from Virginia. There's James going into Virginia again to get him. And then there were some people that thought he maybe could be a player that played early in his career. It's not always easy to identify those players. Some highly recruited kids have not panned out at Penn State, but I got the sense that the coaching staff felt really good about him had he been able to play, that he was going to be a building block, you know, 2 years, 3 years down the line.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's a shame. And, you know, for Penn State, they not necessarily been overly successful with tackle recruiting the last couple of years. And I think this was obviously a tremendous success to land at CEDU. And now, of course, you know, his career comes to an end before it really even began. But he'll be a member of the team. They haven't yet figured out how they're going to utilize him moving forward, but he'll be a part of the team. They'll pay for his scholarship. They'll pay for his medical care while he's on campus. And it's important to note that he does not count against the 85-man scholarship limit for 4 years. So medical hardship doesn't count.
Okay, let's get to second down here on the Penn State Blitz. Whenever Dwight Galt has a chance to talk to the media, he does it in the winter after winter conditioning.
Yeah.
He usually has some pretty interesting insights into where players are. The strength coach is really important for a college team because they're the one coach that gets to be around the kids just about all year round.
Right.
So he spends probably more time than anybody with these kids. He always has some interesting comments, and you had a chance to kind of listen to him talk about the freshman class, the guys that are part of the 18 class. Some of them were January enrollees. Others have been gradually getting into state college. His thoughts on what really struck you about some of the players you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, Bob, I think the one thing that came out more than anything else was that he is enamored by where this group is physically. I mean, when you sign a top 5 class, you expect most of the kids to come in ready to go, ready to compete. And at a physical stage, it's just not, when you're signing mostly 3 stars and then you sign mostly high 4 stars and 5 stars, obviously there's a difference in rating, and that's because the kids are typically far advanced for their age in terms of talent and in terms of size and speed and athleticism and all that. And you could just tell that he was really, really impressed by what this group had to offer physically. P.J. Mustipher is a guy that jumps out at you. I mean, does he play right away as a defensive tackle? We'll see. And then the same with Ricky Slade, the running back. I mean, Joy Galt raved about both of those guys, in particular in the freshman class. Of course, he was, Justin Shorter. No one can talk about him enough, the receiver.
Right.
A couple other guys as well. But Mustipher and Slade really jumped off the page.
Yeah, it wouldn't really be a Penn State Blitz if we didn't talk about Tommy Stevens.
Right.
It looks like he's gotten a little bit bigger. If you remember in the spring, he didn't really get a chance to do much because he had a lower leg injury, and the news was more about him deciding to stay at Penn State.
Right.
But now he should be, in theory, healthy. It looks like he's added some weight. Also, Miles Sanders is a guy that's been waiting a long time to kind of be showcased in the Penn State offense. Those two guys, their roles, and maybe did Dwight say anything about those two?
Yeah, Tommy Stevens, he's 6'3", 233 right now, so it sounds like he's ready to rumble with whatever Penn State wants him to do, whether that's go catch passes, whether that's take handoffs, whether that's actually play quarterback. I mean, he's a guy that you can't really replace and you can't really find anywhere else, especially when you're not sure about your tight end depth. So he looks the part physically to do whatever needs to be done in the 2018 season. And then when you talk about Miles Sanders, the vibe I got from him, Bob, was just that it's ready. It's time for him to have his own show. He was great as Saquon Barkley's backup, but I think he's ready to thrive in his own role, and now we're at that point where he's going to be able to.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see. I think everyone knows what he's like as a runner, dangerous in the open field. Be curious to see how Ricky Ronnie, the new offensive coordinator, uses him as a receiver.
Yeah.
Because that was a big part of their offense when Saquon was here, he was really a weapon. Coming out of the backfield or just running deep routes, wheel routes, check downs. You look at the Iowa game.
Yeah.
One of the differences in that game. So we'll see if Miles can really be, a dual threat.
Yeah, and I think that's where Ricky Slade, Journey Brown, and Mark Allen could come in as well. One note over on the running back thing, C.J. Holmes, the Notre Dame transfer, is good to go. The charges against him were related to shoplifting. They were dismissed during a hearing yesterday. He's now on campus. He is a walk-on, so again, he's not counting against that scholarship total. He also can't play in 2018 because he went from one FBS school to another. So if you were hoping that news meant that Penn State has bolstered depth at running back, it's not going to be the case until next year. However, I think he can help on the scout team, if nothing else.
All right, moving along to third down, it's more kind of summer workout impressions. Dwight Galt expanded on. He didn't just talk about Tommy Stevens and Miles Sanders and the freshmen. The topic of the linebacker group it's not going away. They lost Jason Gabinda, they lost Brandon Smith. It sure looks like Manny Bowen's probably not going to be at Penn State now. There was some speculation about him, so they're really trying to develop some talented kids, but they're all young.
Yeah.
I remember James said at the end of spring that he wasn't really sure who his middle linebacker was. He wasn't really sure where Micah Parsons was going to play, inside or outside. But, I mean, there's no question all these guys can run, they can hit. It's a good-looking group. But what should the fan base maybe expect from these linebackers who are lacking in experience?
Yeah, one of the things that jumped out to me, Bob, was that Dwight Galt basically said when he was surprised when he got to Penn State because they had really good linebackers, but they weren't that fast. They weren't that necessarily the most athletic guys in the world. And now Penn State, between Koa Farmer, between Cam Brown, Micah Parsons, Ellis Brooks, Jesse Luketa. I mean, they have as athletic and as fast as a group as I think Penn State's probably had in years. I mean, these guys can fly to the ball. They can play. They're big enough to play the run, but nimble and swift enough to really work in coverage too. So I think that even though it seems like this group could be a question mark and a potential weakness, I think the way these guys are able to play will outweigh a lot of that concern. You're going to have some lumps and some bruises in September. I don't doubt that. But, Bob, it looks like about as good a group as you could have after you lose, Kabinda, Smith, and some others.
Boy, I sure hope Mike Hull never finds out that Dwight Galt said he wasn't athletic as a linebacker, because Mike's still in the league and he might drive back up to State College. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yes.
Before we get out of this third down segment, I wanted to talk about two corners. One that I think the fan base knows about, John Reed, has not played since the 2016 season. The other is a player that, when you think about Penn State's cornerback group, they don't play just two corners. They want to play four, at least four, maybe more. And a lot of people think, obviously be John Reed, Amani Arouarie, Tariq Castro-Fields has obviously made a lot of progress. But there's another player, Donovan Johnson, I think that really kind of stepped his game up in the spring and in the winter. And I think he's a guy that has a chance to really flash for Penn State this year. So your thoughts on Donovan and John Reed?
Yeah, I honestly thought that it was not surprising, but it was interesting to hear Donovan Johnson's name come up so much during Saturday's media availability before Lift for Life. I think he's a guy that he came to Penn State as a 4-star, and that may have oversold where he was in terms of being ready to get on the field right away. But I think after a year on campus and a little bit more, that he's ready to go now. And we saw what Castro-Fields was able to do. Donovan Johnson has not only return skills, but he has the speed to play corner against the team's fastest receiver. And I think there's a lot of value in that, especially when you look at, again, if Penn State's going to put 5 defensive back on the field a lot, it's going to be Reed, it's going to be Arouarie, and you can assume it's going to be Lamont Wade a good amount of the time. But depending on what they need to do in this particular situation, they're going to have options, and it sounds like Donovan Johnson's one of them.
Okay, yeah, and Lamont Wade was a corner, moved to safety. They like him there, but you just wonder if maybe Donovan Johnson was a guy that they really thought might be able to help them in coverage, and Lamont Wade might just fit better at safety. Okay, 4th down here on the Penn State Blitz. Going to talk a little bit more about recruiting, and let's talk about the fact that Penn State continues to kind of expand its scope in terms of recruiting nationally. 10 years ago, you could draw a circle around Penn State about 300 miles, 350 miles. They were going to get most of their players from there. But it's very clear that they're trying to expand their base geographically. And now there's a player, John Dunmore, a receiver from Florida, who they're in on. And Penn State's got a very good recruiter on their staff who knows Florida well, Jaywan Sider.
Right. Yeah.
So where does it stand with him? He's going to announce on Wednesday while you're eating hot dogs.
That's right.
Probably between 5th and 6th hot dog, you're going to find out about it.
Right? Yeah.
But he's going to make his announcement. How do you like Penn State's chances, and how good of a player is he?
Yeah, I think you have to like him. I mean, you look at all the predictions and thoughts that are out there on this decision, and Penn State is the leader by all counts. I mean, Auburn, Florida State, some other teams are in the mix here. Jaywan Sider was one of the first he changed jobs. He was one of the first. John Dunmore was one of the first prospects that, if I could talk, Jaywan Sider reached out to when he first got a job at Penn State. So they've been cultivating a relationship for quite some time now. Dunmore reciprocated that with a visit to State College for an official. So the 4-star receiver spent a lot of time on campus. You have to like Penn State's odds here. The concern, though, is that one of the Florida schools makes a late run at him down the road. James Franklin has been pretty clear that if you're going to commit to him, you're not going to do any funny business later on. And that's, I think, the concern here at this point would be that, what happens if Florida State or Florida, somebody else down that way in the South, is maybe light on wide receiver commitments come November, come December, and they try and make a push. But, I mean, he's a superb talent, would be, in the conversation to potentially play as a true freshman next year. And I think that Penn State takes his commitment on Wednesday. We'll have to wait and see. Crazier things have happened, but the Lions look to be in a lead right now.
Tall kid, short kid.
Yeah,
obviously he's
guy,
a fast kid. Unless he's going to run, he's one of the
Yeah.
rangy receivers that he kind of looks like he's looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we've seen so far with what Penn State does recruiting-wise at receivers, they look for a little bit of a mix. They obviously love the Justin Shorters and Juwan Johnsons of the world that are 6'4", 225. There's a place for a guy like Brandon Polk, who obviously is not that big. And then you have Dunmore, who slides in the middle there at about 6'2", 170. He's the perfect kind of mixture of speed and size that, kind of falls right in between those two categories of receivers. So I think there's a lot of ways they could use him, and we'll have to wait and see. Again, Florida, Florida State, Penn State, Auburn, all in the running here.
All right, that's 4 downs here on the Penn State Blitz. Are there any comments from the Penn State Peanut Gallery, or are people just focused on the 4th of July?
Well,
I wouldn't blame them if they are.
While I load those up, Bob, I got one for you.
Go ahead.
Since we're on this hot dog kick. The Penn State game you think will bring the most fireworks, like July 4th weekend, and the Penn State game you think you'll be able to get a hot dog at halftime and not worry about the second half?
I think Kent State is probably the game where we can probably just stay in the parking lot and tailgate with the fans, and then listen in. But we would never do that because we're semi-professional. The game that's going to have the most fireworks. I mean, everyone's going to say Ohio State because that's the game that's the game that a lot of people think the winner of that game is probably going to go to the Big Ten championship game. To me, the two games that I'm looking forward the most, believe it or not, the Michigan game in Michigan.
Yep.
Because I have a funny feeling that Shea Patterson's going to be the quarterback that Jim Harbaugh needs.
And who can beat the Detroit Airport?
Yeah, and who can beat the Detroit Airport? And I also, just from a styles standpoint, when Wisconsin comes in late in the year after Penn State's played a lot of games,
Yeah.
that's the best offensive line in the Big Ten. The running game always travels with Wisconsin. So you have Penn State in all their speed, and you have Wisconsin with a veteran quarterback and an offensive line that everyone's back. 2 or 3 of those guys are going to get drafted really high.
Yep.
They have the running back back. You know, are they going to be able to keep the ball for 38 minutes? And,
That's the
and
question.
as great as Trace McSorley might be this year, if he gets limited opportunities, I think from those are the two games, Michigan and Wisconsin. I think more so than Ohio State are the ones that I'm looking forward to.
All right. Chris is curious about Ricky Slade and how Penn State will handle the workload for its true freshman 4-star, you could say it by some rankings, 5-star running back. I guess the question comes down to what do they feel about their guys behind Miles Sanders at this point?
Yeah, and also, I mean, if everyone says that the great thing about Ricky Slade is if you get him in space, you're probably not going to catch him.
Right.
So how do you do that? I mean, to me, I think that they take a long look at him as a returner, and if he's got the hands to kind of impact the game as a receiver, you know, like we've talked about Miles Sanders warning, he's going to be the guy that if Penn State's going to run the ball 25 times in a game.
Right.
You figure he's going to get 16, 18 carries, and it's just going to be a question of how do they divvy up the workload behind him. But Ricky Slade is not the biggest guy, and
No.
not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just think that you want to maximize what he does best. And I think what he does best is if he does get the ball in space, he's just going to be a big play waiting to happen. I think you use him like that. You don't want to give him the ball 15 times. You know, you want to get him the ball 3 to 5 times a game and just go from there.
Right. Question from Pete about Lewis Sine. There's really not a whole lot new with the 4-star safety. Previously from Massachusetts, now playing at Texas at the same school that Deion Sanders coaches at. That's put a lot of different schools in play. In the South, Texas, Texas A&M. Penn State's going to have to weather that storm and hope to get him back on campus before he makes a decision. They probably still lead, but it's close. When he was in Massachusetts, they were far and away the leader. You know, they were justified to everybody else if we make a Triple Crown comparison. Now, I don't even know what the comparison would be. I mean, it's tightened up significantly. So we'll see. I mean, they probably have room for another defensive back in this class, but I don't know if it'll be him.
All right. Anything else?
All
Before we
right.
wrap it
One
up?
last check here down the list. Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. You're right. We'll end with this, Bob. As you look towards the rest of the summer,
Yeah.
and you hear what's coming out of State College, and what player is your one to focus on, or players as summer camp nears? Who do you need to see at the first practice, the first week of August, look different or better or more reliable than maybe they did in the spring? Does anyone come to mind?
So you're talking about guys that we've already seen. You're not talking about the new guys that
Right,
are just
yeah.
on campus.
Right.
Well, I mean, Micah Parsons obviously looks the part. I'll tell you what. I'm going to be looking at the tight end group specifically. I don't know if did you see that they lift Nick Bowers at 270 pounds?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you play tight end at 270 pounds.
Yeah.
He's always been viewed as a guy that can help them in the running game. I don't know. I just know that he and John Holland, I don't think they had shoulder pads on in spring.
Right.
I'm going to be watching those guys, and if they're still not in pads, I really think that Tommy Stevens is going to be a guy that they got to get him integrated into this offense. They got to get him on the field. Mm-hmm. And I think the tight ends in general are on a short leash as far as,
and rightly so.
They got to play consistently, or I think Plan 1A or Plan B is going to be Tommy's going to be on the field. He's almost as big as them now.
Right.
He's bigger probably than some of them, and you know that when he gets the ball in his hands, he can do some damage. So that's really where I'm going to be looking, I think, in August camp when James Franklin allows us to go out there.
All right, the $200,000 question ended. Do you remember the link to the YouTube page?
It's YouTube /all Penn State.
You got it. That's right.
Do you think they got it?
I think so. YouTube.com/all Penn State. That sounds good to me, Bob.
All right. Enjoy the 4th.
Yes,
we'll be back next week.